good evening and welcome to another episode of Not a Collection of Parts. My name is Julian Baker, and this week I wanted to give you some background, sort of fill you in a little bit on who I am and what I've done and why I'm doing this, and what my thinking is as best as I can in a short space of time. And to me, it's a natural, it's an organic space to be in, and I wanted to sort of give you an idea of the line that I walk and the space that I walk in, and as far as my work and my thinking and my research and my study is concerned. Please, just a quick reminder, please do reach out, support me on Patreon, at patreon.com/Julian Baker. It's the kind of thing that's going to help me a lot as far as making sure that I can continue to do this and put out this content and keep it low cost and free. So I studied many years ago as a chef. I left school at 16, 17. The academic life was not likely to be something at that stage that I was able to deal with or cope with, and so I went into the catering trade. I did pretty well, and I worked in places, some good restaurants, got fired from some good establishments, as I always say, in London, and was head chef of a restaurant at probably too young an age, and but it seemed to be a good life as far as I was concerned. I had Princess Diana was a regular client at a restaurant of mine in Covent Garden in London, and I was at Langan's, and then in 1987 I went and travelling to Australia. I was only going to go for a year, and ended up staying away for about 5 years or so, actually a bit longer than that, and came back to the UK in 1993 with a daughter, so which wasn't an expected thing. And along the way, what happened was I'd learned some manual therapy. I learned something called the Bowen Technique, and while I was living in Australia, I had my neck condition that I'd had since the age of about 14. Got thrown doing judo. Kept on coming back, and I was looking for all kinds of solutions and options to try and sort it, and couldn't find anything. And I'd been crunched and cracked and poked and prodded, you name it, left, right and centre. And a chap called Russell Fitzgerald, who I was sharing a house with, pointed me in the direction of his girlfriend at the time, who gave me this thing called Bowen. And I really wasn't impressed at all, because it was just, she didn't do anything. She didn't hurt me. She didn't, she kept on leaving the room. And the Bowen story is another story. But within about 48 hours, my neck pain, which was really, excruciating when it kicked off, had gone. And I was left scratching my head. Now, at the time I was also chefing, but I'd also started to study some reflexology. I'd done a bit of massage, done a bit of Reiki. And so I was open to this idea of touch-based therapy. And so I went away and learnt Bowen. In those days, everything was taught in 4 days and then 2 days, and everybody got accredited. There was no standard at all. And came back to the UK in '93. I thought, well, I'll start teaching over here. And it didn't really happen. It took a long time. It took a couple of years. And then I had an article come out in the Daily Mail in 1994 that just kicked things off. It was huge. And it's a very cool story, which I'll tell another time. But along the way, what happened was I was trying to learn anatomy. So I was starting to teach, and I didn't know my arse from my elbow as far as anatomy was concerned. It was dreadful. So picking up books and trying to understand, what it was that I was doing was one thing, learning the names of things, but it didn't really explain to me the changes that I was feeling. Now, if you're a cook, if you're a chef, then as you cook, things change. If you take a load of egg yolks and you whisk them, then what happens is that you feel the difference as it's cooking. You're making a sabayon to add the hollandaise to, and you can feel the change underneath your whisk. If you're making a roux for a sauce, you can feel the change as the roux cooks, and you can feel the lumps at the end of your spoon if you're cooking a steak. So things are changing. There's a constant change, and you can pick up on those things. You can pick up on a smell, on a sensory input. There's lots of different sensory inputs as far as cooking. And so I think that was my apprenticeship, if you like, for touch-based therapy, because that's really how I still work. I can pick up on very subtle things that may not be obviously visible, and you might call that intuition or what have you, but it's experience, and it's a similar way of knowing. I can walk into a restaurant and go, fryer needs cleaning, or it's a learned skill. So, so again, my anatomy was, was coming along, but the explanation of things about like seeing how somebody would move and how that was related. So somebody would come in and say, my shoulder, I've got shoulder pain, but then I'm trying to understand that and then saying, well, I think it's through the back and the pelvis, and that would change and so on and so forth. That wasn't ever explained as far as the anatomy books were concerned. It just didn't, wasn't in there. And anatomy was really one of those things. In terms of it's a cut and dried. There is no discussion about what a biceps femoris is. It's there, and it goes from there to there, and that's its action. And then I started to learn a little bit more about connective tissues, and then in early 2000s, 2006 or 7, I think it was, I went to the States, and I did a dissection with Gil Headley, and that sort of opened my view, and it changed everything completely for me. And so I came back to the UK, brought Gil over, started to do some dissections, did dissection with Tom Myers, brought him over, we did a tour about anatomy trains because I wanted to apply that to the understanding of Bowen, and that was really where everything sort of that journey went on. And the dissection classes from St George's, Imperial College, St Andrews, and various other places, Oxford University, all over the place really. Again, another story, but really my principle was trying to say that the anatomy that we learn, and I'll do another episode on anatomy and what the problem of it is, because it's a huge problem, that we're not broad enough in our understanding of the body, but that the anatomy that we're learning is very narrow and specific, and that we need to apply it in a different way when we're manual and movement therapists. So, but as I said, that's a slightly different story and not the subject of what I wanted to talk to you tonight about. So then later on, as I started to work in these various universities, I realized that my deeper understanding of things, there was also some stuff that was missing, that it wasn't just the anatomy, there was some physiology, there was cell biology, there was understanding of hormones and cascades and cause and effect, and also then understanding that that what we understand or believe to be true is also going to have lots of different versions and variations and explanations. And so I started to go down that sort of science route, and some years ago now I went to university. I went to the Open University, God bless the Open University in the UK, because they take anybody that can read, write, and do some basic sums, and will help you to get a degree. And so I'm just about to finish a Bachelor of Science honours degree in health sciences, so I'm coming to the end of that. But again, what this allowed me to do was to see that line, that we have this big space in terms of where we're at from a therapy perspective and also a medicine perspective. So where I'm at now, and the reason I'm doing this kind of show, program, episode, whatever, is to walk this line and to try and understand this polarization that happens within the field of, between the fields of complementary medicine on one side and medicine on the other. And somebody described me a bit as a shaman, because I don't really fit in both worlds. Trying to do dissections in universities, nobody knows how to handle me, because nobody's asked to book a session privately that isn't a surgeon or that is outside of that academic environment. And so, and also the fact that I criticise the way that we teach anatomy and the way that we teach anatomy to our undergraduate medical students is just awful. It's just rubbish. Again, another story. But then on the other side, and also within the medicine, we don't have any touch. I mean, what the hell? We don't have any touch-based therapy, and this is madness, little short of madness. Which I'll talk about in a second. And then on the other side, I've spent all my adult life in the field of complementary therapy, and there are some really batshit crazy people in there who have a really strong belief system that is not based on anything except their own rabid understanding or belief of the world. And the pandemic brought a lot of this out. The idea that the pandemic wasn't a virus, the anti-vax brigade. And before you question it, yeah, I'm completely down on the idea of vaccination, because it works. And I was wrong when my kids were little. I was very skeptical of vaccinations. I read a lot on the subject, but I didn't really understand it. And having spent the last few years studying it, like literally studying it as part of a degree, I was wrong. And if I had the same chance now, I would do it differently. I think there are questions to be asked in relation to vaccination. Do we do it too much? Is it across the board? But we can't have those conversations now because of the degree of lunacy that has taken place in relation to those people that are doubting that. And I will get people having a go at me on my comments on YouTube, and people are very, very angry with me for supposedly promoting the lie of vaccination and COVID. Go figure. But that's how it goes. But science is science. So I walk this line of science, and do I believe that everything is scientific? No, science is a very blunt tool with which to dissect reality, and absence of proof is not the same as proof of absence. And the onus, the requirement from within the complementary therapy field to provide evidence is ridiculous, because you just can't provide it. And again, it's the subject of another session whereby we are effectively and deliberately prevented from producing evidence which would then support the understanding of touch-based therapy. So on the one hand, you've got the big pharma, the anti-vax, all traditional medicine is dreadful. And on the other hand, you've got the anything that isn't evidence-based is quackery. And somewhere in the middle there is some wisdom, and touch is a starting point for it. So we know that touch reduces infections, it reduces time spent in intensive care units. We know that it makes people feel better, it's non-addictive, it's very cheap. And when we compare this to the epidemics that we have in relation to pharmacological and painkillers, we have real problems, and these aren't working in response to pain. So we don't have any touch-based therapy. We don't have any structural understanding at the point of delivery within any healthcare setting in the Western world, and I think that's absolutely mad, because we could do, and we could revolutionise the way that we understand healthcare in this country and everywhere else, particularly in the United Kingdom, where we have a socialised medicine and we have free at the point of delivery medicine. If we could introduce some kind of regulated and balanced touch-based therapy that was available to people at a starting point, then I firmly have no doubts that we would be able to radically cut the cost and dependency that we have on healthcare services. The reason we don't have that, as I said, is because the requirement, the evidence that I would need to produce in order to demonstrate efficacy is literally impossible. I mean, for me, I could probably do it. I've been to university. Well, I could do it. I've been to university, I study, I know how to write a paper, and I have currently access to the reference papers because of the university library. Now, if it wasn't for that, then I would have to pay £25 or £30 to get into get access to all the papers that I want to reference. And then where am I going to publish my paper, and who's going to read it? So it kind of doesn't matter the evidence that I produce, because A, it's virtually impossible to do, and B, the amount that I would have to produce and the regularity I would have to produce it, and the places I would have to put it would be, several lifetimes' work. And so you have all these these journals locked behind paywalls, with about 4 or 5 publishing companies holding the keys to that, and that to me is immoral. Do researchers make their money from researching and publishing papers? No, they don't. If you're going to go and scab a paper from a track from Adele, well, that's how she makes her living, so you're stealing from her. But the researcher is getting paid, generally speaking, by at the university which are publicly funded, and so I think it's immoral, the fact that research papers are locked behind these paywalls and that publishing companies are making money out of it. But at the same time, I'm being told that what I do doesn't have enough evidence, but at the same time, the ability for me to produce that evidence is then locked away, and So here I am in this sort of space of walking between these lines of trying to get the therapist to stop talking unscientific bollocks and to understand that some of the answers that we have to our current healthcare crisis is actually staring us in the face, and it's virtually free on our doorstep. It's just that we have to have a better dialogue. We have to stop being so polarized. So what's the answer? I don't know, but certainly what I want to do is I want to present information in a way that's accessible. I want to wear a nice shirt at the same time. I don't take anything myself too seriously or what I do. But I do know that I can touch people and put my hands on them and do my particular treatment on them, and things change. They reduce their pain. I'm not sure what better means. It's another conversation for another time. But people certainly, in a very, very short space of time, don't report the same kind of symptoms that they came in with. So I think the answers are out there, and I think the current experiment that we have of the last sort of 50, 70 years maybe, is one that I don't think we're coming out of very well as far as our healthcare is concerned, and I think we have to radically look at that. So that's really where I'm at, is that I want to help people reduce their suffering. I want people to increase their understanding as far as their own body and their own health is concerned, and I want to empower people to learn a bit about their body. So that's why I'll introduce papers and explain a little bit about what's being said, and bring in different subjects, and there's nothing that's off the table here. I'm very interested in the way that we feel and how that impacts upon our sense of physicality. I'm interested in movement, functional movement, and what we mean by pain, and the things that we say, because I've been teaching this for 30 years. My whole adult life is in this. From the dissection perspective, I don't have a platform at the moment. I have been deplatformed in the United Kingdom, effectively bullied out. There's been some systematic bullying from some lots of levels within the United Kingdom. So I can't operate a dissection. I can't get into any universities in the UK, so I have to go to America and Poland to do that. So again, it's just unfortunate. That's how it is. It's not that I've done anything wrong, or that I have in any way, shape or form been prohibited from doing something by anybody. It's just there is a degree of academic bullying that's taken place, and it's been pretty nasty and stressful, if I'm honest. So at the same time, I think that we have to be a little bit more honest within our industry as far as manual therapy is concerned, to say we don't really know what we're doing. We don't fully understand the mechanisms of touch from a therapeutic perspective. We don't really know what the outcomes are going to be, but what we have to understand is that we can't affect one thing directly. We can't use anatomy reliably as a tool for us to be able to explain what we're doing. Anatomy doesn't work like that. If I raise my shoulder up in the air and I say, well, these are my shoulder muscles that are allowing my arm to lift, well, I've also got movement that's going on down in my hip and down in my abdomen, and those aren't in the books. And so there are relationships, and those relationships tend to be ignored. The obvious is the physics of things, that you move your head around, you change direction on a bike or a horse, and so dog kicking off, and you change direction, you change the way that you move, and so these are the laws of our physical body, which also translate into the way that we might present as far as our illness, disease, and injury is concerned. But we tend not to incorporate those. We sort of ignore those, and I will do a complete session on those different aspects, scientific aspects. So that's me. That's what I'm doing. I would consider myself to be a scientist, and I consider myself to look at what the current logic and what the evidence will present to us. And if something doesn't have evidence, then why not? Is it because it's been locked away, or is it because people, haven't been able to do the work that they should do, or is the evidence poor? And that goes for anything, whether it be vaccination or thistles. Why thistles? I don't know. So, and I'm really keen to. I love answering questions. I love people getting on board and saying, why did we do this and this and this? What happens? And so that's really my thing. I love being in that situation where we can explore and challenge some of the myths that get put out there as well, because there's an awful lot of nonsense that gets talked about, whether it be fascia release or lots of claims that people will make about various things, and I like to challenge those. I like to stir some stuff up, so that's my thing. Stir the pot a little bit. That's all I've got to say on the matter. Well, it isn't. There's lots more. But I wanted to give some kind of understanding as to the raison d'etre, if you like, behind all these things, is to scratch the surface behind the body, the science, the health, and shine a light on some of the less well-known aspects, and to also big up touch therapies and movement therapies, and to help people to understand some of the things that are tricky to understand, and to make them more accessible. So I hope that's, I don't know if it's been helpful or not, but giving you an insight. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate. I always respond to my YouTube questions, or if you email me, then I'm always ready to answer any questions, and whether it be on my Facebook group or anything like that. And if you have anything you'd like me to talk about, a specific subject, an area of the body, if there's anything that you want me to look at, then please don't hesitate to ask, and I will do an episode on it. But for the minute, that's it. That's all I've got to say, and I will see you next week on Not a Collection of Parts. Bye for now.